Mario Langoni. I'm with the Field Museum, and I've been involved with what was CSI as an independent organization for probably almost a decade now. But in the last, say, year and a half, we've been getting together once every 6 months. It's primarily a networking opportunity. It's an effort to really make sure that from the Michigan border to 79th Street in Chicago and down to the end of Lake in Porter County in Indiana, that we're being a hub for people coming together, sharing information, talking about what they're up to and how they can connect with one another. So that's partly what we're going to be doing today. Is we're going to have topics to talk about in terms of you're going to generate those. We'll break out into groups, and people will be able to go to the area that has the activity or the interest that you want to get involved with. But to start out today, we're going to have a presentation from Lisa Kottner with IDNR talking about the Illinois Wildlife Action Plan. So why don't I just give it over to her right away. Woo!
Let me see where I can stand and not get in the way of my slides. All right, well, thank you guys so much. I'm Lisa Kottner. I'm with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources in the Coastal Management Program. And one of the things that I've been working on over the last couple of years is the Illinois Wildlife Action Plan. This is actually a plan that's required by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. IDNR gets a lot of state wildlife grant money from the federal government, and one of the stipulations under that is that we need to have a plan. How are we going to protect the species that are of wildlife that are in the greatest need of conservation in our region? So it has several big goals, and this is a statewide plan, and then I'm going to kind of narrow down to what our plan is in this region, and then I'm going to talk more about like how you guys can be involved. So the goals of the Wildlife Action Plan statewide are to assess the health of wildlife populations and their habitats, identify what kind of stressors and problems the wildlife is facing, and then to come up with like real world solutions that are going to help the wildlife species, things that are doable, that are possible with the existing funding, bringing in new funding, like what are we going to do for wildlife? And it's been subdivided into a whole bunch of different campaigns, and I didn't even include all of like the special resource areas here, but we've got green cities, wetlands, forests and woodlands, farmland and prairie, streams, invasive species. And when the plan was first pulled together in 2005, those were the only campaigns, and I work for the Coastal Management Program. That's the Lake Michigan program, and we came into existence in 2012, so we're relatively new. And this plan was put together in 2005 originally, and so surprisingly, it did not mention Lake Michigan. It didn't mention our dunes and swales, our coastal wetlands, like our habitats here. So we decided to pull together a Lake Michigan and coastal campaign. And so here's a map of, well, there's Illinois. And if you look at just this little area out here, this is the Illinois coastal area. And we actually work in a pretty small boundary that's the Lake Michigan watershed, and a little bit along the rivers, like that blue boundary. And in the Calumet, it's just this area. So it's not a really gigantic geography, but that's kind of the area I'm talking about. So it does include part of the Calumet. We came up with a bunch of goals as we pulled together our campaign, and we worked with a bunch of partners, including the Shedd Aquarium and the Forest Preserve Districts and others. And our goals included minimizing adverse effects of coastal development, improving habitat connectivity, protecting and enhancing habitats, and most of all, increasing the abundance and richness of native species. Because this is really a plan for native wildlife. The first part of our plan was to just give an update on what's been happening over the last 10 years in wildlife management, and this goes through about 2015, so this is a couple years already, a couple years old already. And there's a bunch of new things that have happened in the last 10 years, including the formation of the Coastal Management Program. There's now the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, which is US EPA funds and funds from other federal governmental entities that are going for restoring the Great Lakes and the coastal habitats. There's also the Calumet Conservation Compact that Kim, my coworker, is involved in, where a bunch of landowners in the Calumet area are working together in invasive species issues. And there's a lake plan habitat restoration partnership up in Lake County that is working on similar issues with like the strike team, kind of pooling resources to deal with invasive plants. There's a lot of stressors and threats to native species in our region. Things like habitat loss, fragmentation, disturbance, everything from cars running by and planes and everything. A lot of invasive species, both the invasive plants and invasive animals like quagga mussels, and pollution, and then direct anthropogenic stresses, things like birds colliding with buildings, turtles being hit by cars. So there's a lot of things that are threatening our wildlife. As we pulled together our plan, one of the first steps was to come up with a list of focal species. Like what species, out of all the species in northeastern Illinois, like what species are we going to focus on? What are ones that we can see the trends for, potentially with monitoring, and that might benefit from these actions. So here's our list, and some of these aren't that relevant for the Calumet, like the hoary elephant only is found in Illinois Beach State Park, and the Blandings turtle might not be as relevant, but some of them are, like the black-crowned night heron, for instance. So we came up with a number of universal actions that should happen throughout our area to help all habitat, like minimizing non-point source pollution, promoting remediation of contaminated sites, and reducing road salt. We've got a whole list here. I don't want to bore you guys by reading slides. And we also came up with a number of targeted actions, which are specific place-based actions that are going to address particular problems, particular situations, and will benefit the focal species. And we tried to tie these as much as possible to how are these, like what is the outcome going to be, how can we measure that? That's what a performance measure is. And this is just one example, and I don't mean for you to read it, I just put it up there that for each, for the wetlands and marshes, one of the species is the sedge wren, and we have a bunch of information in our plan about what the need is and what are some of the specific things that could happen, like controlling invasive plants and restoring hemi-marsh conditions. So that was where we ended in about 2015. And since then, our coastal program has continued to do work on a lot of these issues. We've got a ravine planning project that's just starting to look at stormwater and species in ravines. We have a lot of stuff going on with the Calumet compact, where invasive plants are being removed at William Powers and a bunch of other sites. We funded a number of restoration planning projects, like one at Canal Shores Golf Course that's planning on removing invasive species and planting native habitats. So we've been making a lot of progress, and our full plan is available on the web there, or you can just Google Illinois Wildlife Action Plan if you want to see the full thing, and our coastal campaign is available there. But we're kind of at the point right now where work is happening, we are doing things, our partners are doing things, and as a small program, we are not going to be implementing this full program. This is a coordinated, these are the actions that are needed region-wide to help our species in greatest conservation need, but we're not the only ones that are doing the work. Most of the work is being done by forest preserves, by volunteers, by individual park districts, by individual homeowners putting monarch habitats in their backyard, by building owners that are installing windows that are less likely to have bird collisions. So what we want to do right now is figure out the best way to track the work that's already happening. We want to partner with people who are doing this work to get more on the ground projects in place. And we want to monitor the impacts of the restoration on wildlife, especially those species in greatest conservation need, but also other like indicator species that could kind of tell us how those species and the habitats are doing. And so I'm at the point right now where I'm going to try to get together a working group that is going to be talking about like how do we track what's happening in our region. It's more about the data than the actual restoration. But if you're somebody that is doing restoration work, if you're tracking restoration work, if you're monitoring wildlife, I just want I want to get the word out that I'm the contact. I've got some cards, and especially I'm trying to network with all of the different organizations region-wide that are doing like citizen science. If you're not the lead on it, you might not be the right person to talk to me, but the person who's the lead on that citizen science project or the lead on the restoration project, I'd like to get them all networked in so that we're able to keep track of like these are the things that are happening. These are the parts of the wildlife action plan that are actually getting put in the ground, and these are the impacts we're having on species, and this is the stuff that's not happening that somebody needs to focus on, and that's where a lot of our efforts can go into the future. So that was all I had. I think if I took more than 10 minutes, I apologize.
Okay. That's great.
But does anyone have any questions for me?
In terms of your fledgling group, it's just for the coastal area boundary?
Well, what I'm thinking is I'd like to talk to people who are in the coastal boundary and get started, but where it goes from there, I'm not entirely sure, because I have this vision for at least the citizen science and all the monitoring data that's happening, that we start out with kind of like a list of who's monitoring what. And it might end up under the Chicago Wilderness umbrella. That organization's kind of like reforming right now. And we start out with a list of like, okay, the Field Museum is monitoring this, and Friends of the Forest Preserves are monitoring this, and Friends of the Chicago River and Lake County Forest Preserves are monitoring this, and we have a list of who has what data, and then we figure out what data is actually shareable, that we could have some sort of like secure place that all these data are housed. But I also am looking to just collect, start a list of these are all the restoration projects that are happening in my geography or in the regional geography, and so that when we have to update this plan again in 2025, we're not completely starting from scratch where we didn't collect what was happening in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. The longer we push it down, the harder it's going to be to track what had happened before. So, yeah.
As a follow-up to that, so it might be helpful, we, as a part of CSI a few years ago, developed a stewardship map to track like where active restoration was taking place, if there was monitoring happening at a site, what was it, if there's environmental education.
That is what I want to
So it
build
was visualized on a map, and there was a survey that partners filled out every year for a few years in a row. We haven't really done much with it, so we should take a look at that and see if that sort of format could be helpful at all.
Yeah,
it's just for like, it's really a reflection of like the participants that were active in CSI. So it was like a reflection of the partnership in some way. So it wasn't comprehensive, but it was as best as we could do at the time.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm hoping just to start with. My geography is a little bit different. I'm sort of envisioning this eventually ending up under the Chicago Wilderness umbrella, so it'll cover the whole Chicago Wilderness area. But I'm only funded to work in the coastal zone, so I have to focus on my geography. Any other questions? Yeah.
Does your coastal zone take in the little Calumet River?
I will show you that. Who has got that? Yeah.
Basically, okay, it's open in the end, and so it goes.
It's always a blue island.
Oh,
Yeah.
We don't go across the border in Indiana.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, coast.
Yeah, we're right on the state line, and then to Phase Point.
Well,
and
actually, state line is not exactly line if you look at a real detailed map, because we think it goes from Lake Michigan to Wabash. There's a little bend in my increase. So I don't know what that's about. Nobody can explain.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah, I know that our geography followed roads. They tried to do the watershed as much as they could, but they had to write a legal description of what the boundary was, and so that's why it's a little weird. Any other questions?
I think what might make sense too is if we move on now, you wanted to form this group that when we do the breakouts, you want to be one of the breakouts and people can come talk to you about.
Sure,
Okay.
exactly, I can do that.
Okay.
All right,
So,
well, thank you.
sure, thank you. Yay. So let's quickly go around the room, maybe limit yourself to a minute or two. But this is your chance not only to introduce yourself and say your name, but to say what it is that you're working on now that's really the core thing you're working on at this time moving forward. And then based on those things that people talk about, that'll help us to form the groups that we break into after that. So why don't we start with Ben over here?
I'm Benjamin Cox. I'm with Friends of the Forest Preserves. I'd say that probably this time of year anyway, the biggest thing we're focusing on is Conservation Corps members, high school kids. For the summer, we'll have about 250 kids out working, a lot of them down here on the south side. But we're also working with some other partners right now to really expand volunteer recruitment. And Calumet's a special challenge for that. We've been working on that here for a long time, but we're still going to keep at it and try and maybe change our approach a little bit. And there's some other places in the county that we're thinking about working on too. And our goal with volunteer recruitment is to find people, train them up to be leaders, empower them, and then let them go and own a site and run it on our own. We don't have the staff or resources to just run sites forever, and we don't think that's the way that communities are built anyway. So we try and just kind of get it going and then let it fledge on its own.
So my name's Chuck Prisbel. I'm a filmmaker, and I'm working on a documentary film on the Grand Calumet River. I'm also launching sort of a spin-off of that, which is called Calumet Films, and it's short vignettes, basically, that are going to cover different aspects of the Calumet region. The first one we have coming out is on the Kickapoo Woods cleanup on the Little Calumet River. That we did last year, and there's a bunch of other ones that are going to follow suit. I'm interested in talking to anyone about potential filmmaking opportunities.
So Kevin or Joanne, do you have any maybe a single announcement or?
We document events like this. Kevin Murphy, Joanne Podkel Murphy, and we've been doing it for 11 years. So we have about 380 some videos of the things that are going on in the region like this on a YouTube site. And our purpose in starting this was simply that a long time ago we realized that downtown video coverage was of this area as Beirut on the lake. And we thought, no, there's a little bit more to this than the media seemed to understand. So we were trying to get the positive stuff up there and doing. That's what we've been doing. And it's nice to know that somebody else is getting into it. We have some other colleagues in the area who are doing some really fine work. If you haven't seen Shifting Sands yet, you need to see that. And so it's good to know that more documentation is taking place. No matter what we do, we won't get it all. No matter how many of us are out there, we won't get it all. But the more that we get it up there and get it available, the better the documentation of the region. And especially of the good stuff.
Part of what we do is mixed with artists who give us great ideas about everything that's going on. One of the artists is Roman Villarreal, and if you haven't been to 87th Street and seen his rendition of Steelworker, you should. It's 15 feet high, and it's the first thing that really pays tribute to what happened there, and it's from the steel workers' perspective rather than the steel mill owners. So we spent a lot of time with the artists, and it's really kind of mind-boggling that there's so much talent, and it's just sort of like waiting to be advertised. We do our best. We have some signage that we put out on the street or at the site. It's got a QR tag on there, so you can click. For the public art, you can see 30 different art sites not all at once, but kind of run through them. And you can see our videos for each of the art sites.
If we've documented it.
Yeah.
We haven't documented them all.
But a lot of them we have. And then the other one is for green sites in this area. We started with the 10th Ward. 10th Ward has got about 40, thank you, good. Okay, so we've got about 40 different green sites, meaning buildings that are LEED certified, open space, tons of it, obviously, and also green gardens, where people have just taken over the local plot and turned it into something magnificent. So if you click on that,
Did you mention the Blues Brothers sites?
oh, that's, I'm going to take too much time here.
Okay.
But
We
we
have,
will.
what she's referring to, I don't know if that was spaced out a little bit, but these tours are all on another site called Calumet Region Sites. It's easy enough to find. Just Calumet Region Sites has all our digital tours on it. And you could get at it that way, or you get out on the ground, and where we've been able to tag them this way, or with some more modernistic tags that we've come up with recently that may be more durable too, we hope. You can do it on the ground as well, so that either way you can get at it. Sorry about that.
Okay, he said Blues Brothers and then he dropped it, right? Okay, but for the Blues Brothers, we had the original sites. They were there before the movie, and there are people, believe it or not, who are still fixated 30-some years ago, remembering what scenes they saw being shot, and we like to respect that and celebrate it. So that's a deal that the South Chicago Chamber of Commerce has worked out. So we have a map that you can use to see all the ones in South Chicago, including Curl Up and Die. Okay, and again, these are sites that were there before the movie was made. And for any place that was a site, we put signs up in business windows pointing in what various directions, like Joliet State Prison, what is it, 20 miles or something from Commercial Avenue, so we don't leave anybody out. Okay, thank you.
Great. Sherry?
Hi, my name is Sherry Meyer, and I'm a geographer, and my company is named Insights. I'm also on the board of the Calumet Heritage Partnership, and we're working to form the Calumet National Heritage Area.
I'm Tom Shepard. I'm also a board member with the Calumet Heritage Partnership, as well as the Southeast Environmental Task Force. I'm lately mostly been working on open space issues and trails, doing bike rides, hikes, and tours and whatnot. These are long, ongoing endeavors, like getting Lake Calumet open to the public, rather than just a golf course out there, but getting an opportunity for people to get out there and experience the lake there and the open space and the wildlife and so forth. Working with a group called Calumet Connects that's locating sites along the Calumet River from where it comes into off Lake Michigan at roughly 92nd Street down to 106th Street to form little pockets of open space that would be good for wildlife and good for hiking and people to be able to experience the Calumet River. And finally, also working on an underground railroad on the Little Calumet River, the Underground Railroad project that is going on to memorialize the site where there was a safe house owned by Dutch settlers back in the 1840s and 1850s for freedom seekers that were coming up from the south. So we just had a meeting earlier this morning where we talked about that with the group that's working on issues over there on the Little Calumet River. Glad you mentioned the Little Cal there, Mark. So that's about it.
Okay. Maybe we need to go a little faster too.
Sorry.
That's okay. So let's just go around that table there.
I feel like a real shirker after all that. I am not involved with an environmental group. I am Pat Hansen. I live in Dalton. I'm an artist. And I became interested in the Underground Railroad movement, and I just signed up to be on that committee because the sites that are involved are close to where I live. And it's also the Calumet River, as it is in Dalton and Riverdale, about 138th Street. I have a son who works right there. And so at that site is kind of very personal for me. and I have decided that would be a worthy cause. So I'm involved with that. And I'm also, because I am a resident of Dalton, Illinois, we have a very old town hall that was built in 1874. And we're trying to get our mayor to form a committee to have that on the National Registry of Historic Places. And so if that ever starts, I'll be involved with that. End of story.
Howard Czar. I volunteer for the Field Museum. I worked for the EPA for an awful long time before that. Have been involved in lots of Calumet activities, but not much lately.
I was the environmental director at Acme Steel for almost 30 years. I'm with the Calumet Area Industrial Commission now. A lot of stuff comes across my desk, so I brought in quite a few flyers and that, put them on the front desk up there. If you would have any questions on any of the events, just check with me. I will mention one, that on Saturday, Method or People Against Dirty is having an open house over at their plant over at Pullman Park from 11 to 2 o'clock. It's an interesting place to go into. They're teaming with Cook County, Gotham Greens, and Waste Management to have some Earth Day activities there. And if you bring in a recycle bottle, they'll give you a new bottle of soap. So they refer to the plant as the South Side Soapbox, but it's an interesting place to see.
I'm Debbie Newman. I live in the Pullman Historic District, and I've been on and off involved with different things around the Calumet area. And I get your emails all the time, and I had a free afternoon, so I just wanted to show up. If you guys are interested in learning more about Jens Jensen, Earth Day on Sunday, we have the filmmaker actually going to be in attendance for a Q&A at the end of it. She's flying in from California. So we're partnered with the Pullman National Monument and the Historic Pullman Foundation, and the Pullman Garden Club is the host. So that's fine.
Sure.
I'm Sarah Coulter. I'm the executive director of an organization called the Calumet Collaborative. And we're actually project managing conservation action planning for 3 different sites in northwest Indiana right now. The sites are Hoosier Prairie, Moraine, and Ambler Flatwoods. And we're pulling together land managers from all of those areas to identify the targets, conservation targets, threats and opportunities, as well as potential land acquisitions to increase and preserve more of the land in the Calumet region.
Curtis McKinney. I'm with Chicago Department of Transportation and Greenport, Chicago. And well, right now we just started our training program. So we just hired 25 new trainees for a year. So they're finally out and about in the field working. We do a lot of work in the Calumet area, the different forest preserves and the park districts in the natural area of the park district. So we still have to get a lot of projects that we plan on working on this year. And yeah, that's just a little snippet of what we're doing. And I can go on and on because it's a lot. We're doing a lot this year. So, yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Raquel Garcia Alvarez. I'm the Stewardship Program Coordinator with the Forest Preserves of Cook County. We do a lot of things. One of our big initiatives in the Calumet region in South Holland specifically is promoting Sandwich Nature Center as a hub and a resource. So we're doing a campus idea of connecting that with also the Aquatic Center and the Shabona Woods campground that's really close by. That a lot of individuals don't know that you can go camping in South Holland. But my role specifically is to recruit volunteers for 90 sites throughout the forest preserves in Cook County. And some of our goals are just like increasing volunteer recruitment, increasing volunteer capacity through our Path to Stewardship program. We're partnering up with Maureen Arboretums to try to do some online trainings. And also trying to increase just awareness of the forest preserve and focusing more on social media.
I'm Rob Telfer. I work at the Field Museum. I'm the Calumet Outreach Coordinator. And I'm supposed to be helping remove the barriers between people and nature in the Calumet region. So some of the ways we do that is through habitat restoration, Calumet Cook County sites, and also engaging with partners right now in West Gary with Shirley Hines Land Trust and the Nature Conservancy to help activate their sites there. And so tomorrow we'll be doing a cleanup in Gary that you're all invited to. And Saturday, I don't know. And Saturday, we'll be at Bovian Woods for an Earth Day cleanup and Stewardship Day. And we saw a turkey there yesterday, which is the first, and probably a bald eagle. I looked it up, probably a bald eagle. So yeah, it's full of birds. Lisa?
Oh, I'm Isa Ledvinsky. I'm an ecologist with the Field Museum for Calumet, and I am currently working on some habitat restoration, implementing some monarch habitat creation on the southeast side of the city and into Gary, Indiana, and also if anyone grabbed those handy laminated rapid or field guides, as we now call them. I help to encourage people to make those for your sites and or areas of your interest.
And they're all available for free on our website.
Fieldguides.fieldmuseum.org.
I'm Eric Bird. I'm the Stewardship Director for Shirley Hines Land Trust. We're a land trust in northern Indiana, from Lake County to St. Joseph County, 2,400 acres. We're currently gearing up to plant another 20,000 or so trees this year, and lots of stewardship restoration projects, lots of nature preserves that have public access, education programs. I could fill your day with telling you what I'm doing this year. So if you would like, I'm happy to talk to you. I have lots of information on the table and stuff as well.
I'm just a homeowner.
What's your name?
Ginger, I live on the east side, on Avenue.
My name is Rose Arias. I'm the secretary for the South Holland Garden Club. I came here because I keep on getting emails from Rob telling me to volunteer and show up at these things. So I had a free afternoon. I happen to have 2 days off this week from work. So I dragged my friend because she's always saying about how little there is being done on the south side. And now coming here and hearing all of you speak, boy, were we wrong. But it's great to be here and to hear about Sandridge and whatnot. So that's
the system works. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm Kim Creeling with the Department of Natural Resources Coastal Program. As Lisa had mentioned, I work with the Calumet Conservation Compact, and we're doing restoration on DNR sites, Chicago Park District, Forest Preserves, Cook County, Nature Conservancy, and Illinois Nature Preserves Commission sites. And so far we've brought in over $2 million in grants for restoration to the area. So we have another grant application going in a couple weeks.
Hard to compete with that number. I'm Laura Milker, and I'm also with the Field Museum and with these guys on the Calumet team that does work to hopefully advance conservation on the ground. And we don't own any land as a museum, and so we partner with a lot of the other folks in the room to do that work. So we work, as Rob mentioned, in Northwest Indiana and then also on the south side of Chicago. Glad to be here.
I'm Lisa Connor. They let me have the floor, so you guys already met me. But I also, in addition to doing Wildlife Action Plan, I also run our competitive coastal grants program, and we fund a lot of projects that are doing hydrology planning down in the Calumet region, taking kids outdoors, stuff like that.
Come over here. My name is Neil Johnson. I live in Lansing. I'm unaffiliated, just another interested person who came, and I'm working on consumer this.
Go ahead, Lisa.
My name is Betsy Green, and I'm with the League of Women Voters of Chicago, and also the Green Sanctuary Committee of the Beverly Unitarian Church, who are having a hazardous waste collection on May 6th, and there's a flyer over there on the table. It's going to be, well, at 111th at Cottage Grove, but it's between the Hotel Florence and the Pullman Monument, Pullman National Monument building.
Oh, okay. I'm Mark Perrine. Yeah, stuck with her.
Okay, I'm a volunteer with the Friends of the Forest Preserve. I work at Kickapoo. Bobian, Whistler, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Taking out invasive species, honeysuckle, buckthorn, garlic mustard. I go where I'm needed, but I'm starting out a new group. Oh, please. What? Oh, Maritime Museum. Okay, just a minute. Be quiet, lady. Hopefully I'm going to be taking some pictures and see if I can put some pressure on the people that own the brown box, UPS, along the Des Plaines River, because it's a site. As soon as I can get my canoe out there and start taking pictures, I'm going to mail them the pictures and tell them what they got and see if we can get them to help us clean up that section of the Des Plaines River. That's it. Oh, Friday night, the Chicago Maritime Museum at 35th and Racine, we're having an open house. You're all invited. See me for details.
Okay, 1968, 2018. 1968, we would have a war that's tearing up the country like we're going to have again. And where did those minerals come from? I worked on the chemistry that was involved for what we were trading under the table with the Soviets and Chinese so they could shoot at us. The tungsten we don't have. Chromium we used to get from southern Rhodesia. We put a boycott because it's a white separatist. We still got the chrome. Where did it come from? I'd write the Commerce Department, and they'd correct the misspelling in my letter. And they say little Turkey, little Korea, and little other. They never said what the other was. The other was the Soviet Union who's buying up from southern Rhodesia and selling us at inflated prices. So the minerals here, the war, the strategy, the geography is very important. And we haven't found out really who a lot of these owners are and who got to pay the price for these wars and who made the wars. Kenneth Layden, candidate, State Senate, removed by our courts because I was in the top ballot position, and for Alderman of the 10th, again removed by these mental midgets downtown. End of recording. For copy, it's 25 cents and coin a stamp. Merkle Press.
Does that mean it's me?
Yeah. Come on down.
All right.
He's cute or anything.
Not by much.
Oh, you know about this.
I'm Karen Lewis. I'm with Blue Stem Communications, and we are currently working with Sarah's organization, the Calumet Collaborative. So I'm just kind of here to see what you guys are all up to.
Oh, I think I got one thing.
Mike Shola, formerly of Chicago State University and Calumet Environmental Resource Center, longtime friend of the Stewardship Initiative, and currently trying to figure out what we're going to do with the CSI website and how to merge it with the Calumet Heritage Partnership.
All right. Anybody else who came in?
I'm Sharon Rolick, one of the founding officers of Calumet Ecological Park Association. I've worked with the Southeastern Environmental Task Force, with Audubon, with Sierra Club. I think that's enough. I just kind of have been out of the loop for a while and wanted to find out what all is happening now and what I can do to participate.
I'm Sue Bennett at Pullman National Monument. I work there as a park ranger.
And I'm Elizabeth Evans, and I work with Karen at Blue Stem, and we also are doing a project in on stormwater out in Porter County. So we skulk.
Great, thank you. So now, I think it's going to be a little bit maybe different than we've done some other times, but some of the same basic ideas. So we'll do breakout groups where you can go discuss a specific topic in that group or converse with that group. So far we have Lisa's group talking about the working group to the Illinois Wildlife Action Plan. Okay. I'm going to have a group which is going to look at the environment and stewardship priorities that were laid out in the Calumet Heritage Initiative Feasibility Study. And we will actually talk about what would it mean in the management plan, you know, to have those priorities, you know, what should those priorities look like in the management plan. And then other groups, Sherry Meyer wants to talk to people about Wolf Lake, yes. She's working on a sort of a tour or scavenger hunt kind of activity for Wolf Lake and is interested in connecting with people that have Wolf Lake history, Wolf Lake stories. Wolf Lake Leads kind of thing. So she's over there in that corner. I'm trying to think, and then Laura, you have one also.
So I want to quickly touch base with some folks. We're revamping the Calumet Outdoors series, which is a monthly hiking, biking, outdoors recreational program that individual partners around Calumet have helped sponsor in the past, and we've taken about 4 or 5 months off, and now we're rebooting it. And so I know Benjamin and Tom, I need to connect with you guys, and then if anybody's interested in thinking about like next year, if you're really curious about what this series is, we'd be happy to talk to you about that. So that's a quick piece, but then I really want to talk a little bit about communications, just particularly what happens with our Facebook communications, because we have both the Calumet Stewardship Initiative Facebook, that's like an official page of CSI, but you can't have conversations on it, and then there's a Calumet Nature Nerds, and so how can we create a hub of information for us as a group in the region? And so instead of punting it to 6 months from now, I thought we could just hopefully leave this meeting with a decision about where we go with some of the online communications.
And Rob, did you have something that you were going to talk about as a group?
I kind of want to talk to all of those other groups, so I want to float around to those. But yeah, I mean, no. I mean, I did want to talk about community outreach, but it sounds, I don't know. I could host a table. I could host a table. Unless no one wants to talk about community outreach, totally fine. Super important though, so I will sit here and then choose my life accordingly.
Anybody else that has a table topic that they want to host? I think that some of these topics are a little bit drop-in, so there'll be some moving around to people between tables and stuff. Others will be a little more like, let's sit and have a conversation. And I guess it's 4 o'clock now, so if we do this until about 4:40, we have 40 minutes, we could do that. Sherry will stay back there where she is. Laura can stay where she is. Rob, you want to be there?
I do.
Is that good? Okay.
I should just add too, if you heard something from somebody else around the room and you want to just go talk to that person, I mean, this is informal and flexible, so you should get out of this next 40 minutes what you want to get out of it.
You're not bound to your table.
Yeah, you're not bound to like sit in one spot.
And then I can, let's see, I'll use this table over here to talk about the management planning and the feasibility study. Oh, and Lisa, why don't you go over there?
That one?
To
Okay.
table.
Sure.
Yeah.
This woman is trying to talk to her, so I have no
Hi, how's it going? Good, how are you? I'm glad that I have this.
I think they do in CPL.
Okay.
I made them supposed to live. I don't know if I gave that name, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not big enough for names. Yeah, I mean, we are. Oh, and you guys also fall under the Green Cities. Oh, Nancy.
Yeah, I'm with before.
Super common. Yeah, so that's all. If and when you talk to Levi, just down there. It should, I think it only blooms like 8 weeks in the summer.
If I can get your attention,
It could be anything.
Brandon, do I report back now?
Yeah, sure.
Do you have a card?
Freely, yes.
Here, you take my card and
The same construction.
yeah, it's like Kim. Oh yeah,
I want to get like Robert.
No. I get my coworkers to support me in the fact that I'm trying to get attention in the room.
Yeah, Rob.
Do you want us to start over?
All right, that is me. All right, we want to take a couple minutes to share back some ideas that came out of your group so that people can hear about them, and then we can talk a little bit about what comes next for all of us. Our group over here, we talked about the environment and stewardship goals that are articulated within the within the feasibility study for the National Heritage Area. And as we move forward now, the next step with planning for that National Heritage Area is coming up with what's called a management plan. And in that you have to propose management structures, and they have to be designed to support the approaches to achieving the goals that you come up with. So we were thinking about additional approaches to achieving these goals so that we could have all of them listed as we head into thinking about what the structure should be. So some of the additional things we came up with that I thought were interesting was, for example, trying to look at something like funding for stewardship and ecological work at a more regional level. How can the heritage area help both identify but also stimulate the creation of funding sources that would be at a regional scale? Another thing we look at is even in terms of measurement and evaluation of the impact and quality of restoration work, can the heritage area be an entity that at the regional level creates reports on stewardship at the regional level? How is that it measures restoration at the regional level and can produce that data and show how it's going at that level. So we had a few different things like that where we thought about what does it have to look like at the regional scale? What is missing at the regional scale that the heritage area can address? And we probably came up with 4 or 5 good ones that we don't have here already. So we'll take that back, incorporate it in, and then maybe bring it back again to groups like this to look at it again. So let me jump over here and have you guys report a little bit of what you came up with.
Well, I had a good conversation with Elizabeth from Blue Stem, who's, I think she left already, but she was saying that she would be happy to help kind of talk through the facilitation of a working group on monitoring and habitat restoration. And then I also talked with some other folks who actually do monitoring and habitat restoration, and they were excited to talk to each other. So I think that we're going to have a robust group that will have some great ideas on like what existing apps and websites and formats we could potentially use to collect together data and how we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Okay. I have a question for you based on that though, because I think it was the last CSI meeting or maybe the one before, there was one of the breakout groups where it was about like coordinating the different groups that do restoration around the region, having a venue in which they can talk and share and stuff. And so I'm wondering, is this like mapping onto that in a sense? Like, in other words, does it formalize it in some ways, or is it just a sub thing?
I'm thinking that what I want to lead is going to be a little subgroup that will have a very focused mission on how to use all of the different habitat monitoring programs that are happening in the region to see if our restoration is actually working. And we'll have a pretty clear, defined mission, but then there'll be some opportunity for the group to kind of build itself as like, what do we really need to get out of it so that everybody involved will get what they want. I think Chicago Wilderness and sometimes may have the vision as they're rebooting of having a restoration group that is actually talking about restoration throughout the region. So we might not need to be that.
Right. Okay. Cool. Sherry, did you have any conversations around?
So I did have an opportunity to speak with staff from IDNR and the Coastal Management Program and learn that they do have access to data that goes back a little bit more than a century, which is what I've been trying to get at for a while in the creation of a quest, which is a treasure hunt that is situated in place-based learning and place attachment. And so I'm able to get in and get facts that are going to back up the anecdotes that I've been extracting in interviews around the lake area. So this is a great connection. Thank you.
Okay, we'll jump back to you.
Yeah. So we hammered out some nuts and bolts about Calumet Outdoors, but so it's not always funny to talk just about confirming your Calumet Outdoors hike, and hopefully we'll share that out to confirm the schedule. And then the other part of our conversation is just about what happens with, in particular, the Facebook presence of the work that we do, because I'm sure there's other social media platforms that we could be using, but we don't at the moment, and we can barely, activate and maintain the ones that we do have. So we look primarily and only at the Facebook groups that we have, and we identified a few of them. Calumet Stewardship Initiative, which is, I don't really understand Facebook all that well, but it's like an official page of the organization. And then there's Calumet Outdoors, which is a group that in the past has just posted the outdoor series hikes. And then there's Calumet Nature Nerds, which is a conversational space trying to build community around nature and Calumet. And as a team, we sort of thought that Calumet Outdoors like communicated the best sort of general, like come get to know anything about nature in Calumet. So our proposal would be to use that and sort of combine forces with the other ones and maybe potentially say Calumet Outdoors and then a project of Calumet Stewardship Initiative underneath it so that we don't lose the connection back to Calumet Stewardship Initiative. But we also don't want to just make that decision in isolation. We thought we should ask the partnership, and so I'm not sure who that is yet. We're sending out a survey to ask just through Facebook, you know, which one of these do you like, and hopefully by consensus we can come to some decision that we can move forward with, because we would love to create some sort of hub where all the things that we do, from bike rides to, you know, habitat restoration, all the different kinds of things that you do outside can just come together in one place, and that people would see the incentive and the value of adding to it because they know that that's where everybody is going to look for it, and then you would also know yourself if you're looking for something, that's where you go. So we're kind of doing that in like different ways right now, and a lot of it's working, but it's diluted because there's multiple ways in which we're doing it.
Sure.
So if anybody has additional thoughts about how we could be doing that better, let me know, and we will be sending out a survey.
All right. Who's next over here? Who's the next conversation to report out?
We talked about sort of like basic community engagement strategies and just sort of like how there are different platforms for different messages and the way that you want to talk to people both online and in person. And I think what is relevant to the conversation about communications with social media and the email list is that no matter what platform you use, you have to have some kind of strategy, some kind of plan for upkeep of making sure that new people get added, the right new people get added, so that wonderful folks can just show up based on the communications that you're doing. So yeah, I think there are lots of different platforms and lots of different things. Like Laura briefly talked about the difference between a page and a group, and that makes a big difference on what you can discuss on Facebook, even though those sound on the surface completely similar, and I feel dumb for knowing the difference, but I do, and so there is a big difference, and you reach different audiences. So yeah, that's all.
All right. Anybody else have something to report out from your conversations, something you want to share that you learned? This need to have, when you talk about promoting ecology at the regional scale, you need entry points for people that are closer to their own experience if they haven't been involved in conservation and native planting before. And then gardening would be a possibility for doing that. I think we got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to wrap it up and say two things. The next meeting is October 11th. It will be in Indiana because we switch back and forth, but it'll be Thursday, October 11th from 3 to 5 p.m. That gives us all 6 months to put it on our calendars. And what we did with Lisa having a short presentation today is one model of how we can proceed. We could have like a presentation, then we have our breakouts and discussion and all that. Another thing I was thinking about doing, and I wanted to quickly get a little bit of feedback on, was if we were sharing, say, challenges we faced and solutions we've come up to them, or tools that we've had that we've come up to meet those challenges, if we wanted people to do, say, 10 or 15-minute presentations on those. So to give you one idea, CSI created 2 videos for outreach, for ecology outreach, which we created over 2 years ago, and they get lost in the mix as CSI has transitioned to being part of CHP. But we have those 2 very short videos that were made so that people could carry them with them as they go out and meet with community groups and organizations that may want to get involved in a consortium of organizations and the advantages it has. We could show those here and then make them available to people so that they would be available to you. We could have a short discussion of how effective have things like videos been for you in promoting your work. And that would be a short segment of the program next time. Is that the kind of thing people would like to do? And is that particular one of interest?
No. Sounds great to me. It's a way for you to provide folks with new tools, and that's helpful. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree, big home.
All right. Thank you. So I think that's it. It's 5 minutes to 5, so we're a little bit early, which is good. But thanks for coming. Hooray! Thanks, Mario.